Hello, I'm Peter Costanzo with ROI Consulting Group and a board member of the IT community of IFMA. We welcome you to day one of FM Tech Week 2026. It's our second year, and we're proud to be sponsored by Schneider Electric. This session is brought to you by Planon, a big supporter of IFMA ITC, and in my case, a trusted partner. It is a pleasure to introduce Mahnaz, Ensafi, and Lucas Wieland as they take us through when AI goes too far, defining human boundaries. I appreciate everyone joining us from around the world today. Let's jump into the discussion. Mahnaz and Lucas, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Mahnaz Ensafi, and I work as a solution architect at Planon. A big part of my role involves helping organizations evaluate and implement technology across facility and real estate operation. Beyond that, I have also had the opportunity to contribute to industry discussions around AI adoption and governance. Lucas, I'll hand it over to you for your introduction.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lucas Wieland. I'm our services manager here at Planon specifically for North America. I work as well as a member of Mahnaz's team and help our customers to adopt our Planon IWMS solution across different industries. And yeah, I'm also involved in the IFMA group on the WE side, looking into emerging technologies. I'm very excited today to speak to you about the AI topic.
Thank you, Lucas. Can start our presentation. So before we start going through our presentation, I would like to start with a question. How many of you have used ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, or any other AI tool this week to write an email or summarize a document? My guess is that for many of us, the answer is yes. Now let me ask a different question. How many of you would be comfortable letting AI automatically shut down a building, approve contractor access, or even prioritize your emergency work orders without anyone reviewing the decision? For most people, that's a very different level of comfort. So what's interesting is that both situations involve AI, yet your comfort level changes dramatically depending on the level of authority you give it. Next slide, please. Historically, facility systems have provided information and humans have made the decisions. But today, AI is increasingly moving beyond information into recommendations, prioritizations, or even taking direct actions in some cases. And that's the case in facility management as well. We are seeing this shift happening across different areas in facility management. AI is helping classify your service requests, prioritize your work orders, optimize schedule, or even make recommendations around building operation or strategy. So as AI becomes more capable, the real decision involves identifying where human judgment should remain part of the process and where automation can be trusted to take a greater role. A lot of time when I talk to people about AI, they just jump to the end state, fully autonomous system making decisions independently. But AI involvement can take many different forms, ranging from a simple support to full autonomy. And all of these supports represent a different balance between efficiency, control, risk, and accountability. So one way to think about AI is to view AI involvement as a spectrum rather than a simple yes or no decision. Next slide, please. For the purpose of today's discussion, we have grouped AI involvement into 5 practical levels, moving from a simple assistance to full autonomy. So the key idea here is that as we move up the scale, the potential value increases, but so do the risk and the governance responsibilities. So as we go through these levels, I would like to encourage you to think about your own organizations and think about where you would be comfortable operating today. So the first level is assistant. At level 1, AI acts as an assistant. So it flags anomalies, summarizes information, draft content, but really human remains in control of reviewing the information and deciding what happens next. Many organizations are comfortable operating at this level or already operating at this level because AI helps them to work faster and more efficient without changing the authority on the decision making. An example of that in facility management is when you get a service request with a long description stating that there's a conference room that is freezing and occupants are uncomfortable. So in this case, AI may summarize the information, identify key details, and provide that to the facility team. But still, it's a facility team that will review that request and decide what's the issue and what to do next. So at this level, the risk is pretty low because people are in control of every decision. The next level is advisory. So in this level, AI goes a step further. Instead of simply surfacing the information, it starts making recommendations and even prioritizing some options. So going back to our service request example, now AI looks at the request and states that this may be HVAC related and possibly should be treated as a high priority. So at this level, it's the AI provides the recommendation, but still human decides whether to accept that recommendation or not. AI influences the decision, and that's why governance becomes more important at this level, because we naturally, as humans, begin trusting recommendations when they sound reasonable. Up to this point, AI is supporting decisions, but starting with level 3, AI begins taking actions. So L3, conditional automation, this is where AI reviews the information and automatically executes predefined actions. Returning to our example with a service request, this is where AI determines that the request is HVAC, which happened at level 2 as well, but it will create the work order. So it's not just providing the information, but it starts initiating an action that is relatively narrow and can be reversible if there are some consequences and something needs to be corrected quickly. Organization begin to see meaningful efficiency at this level while still feeling comfortable with the level of control they retain. The next level is where we delegate control to AI. It's where AI begins making operational decisions rather than simply executing an action. So at this level, AI may evaluate multiple factors and make a decision based on those boundaries. Continuing with our HVAC and service request example, at this level, AI may evaluate technician skills, their workload, how important is the building, and then decide who should receive the assignment and how the resources should be allocated. So this brings a tremendous value, but also it can have real consequences, because if something goes wrong now, there's a response time issue, occupant experience, and operational performance. So this is where organizations need to think very carefully about accountability, because if something goes wrong, we need to know who owns the decision. And for that reason, governance becomes just as important as the technology itself. The last level is what mostly people talk about, autonomous authority, when AI makes a high-impact decision independently without any authorization from the humans. So back to our example, imagine that the AI decides that the issue is severe enough to automatically shut down the equipment without any approval. The consequences can be significant, but if it's correct, also can be a very efficient process. So at this point, the errors are no longer inconvenience. They're going to start affect safety, business continuity, liability, and organizational trust. So while fully autonomous systems receive a lot of attention, for these reasons, many organizations are still evaluating whether they are ready to move beyond level 2 and 3. So the important takeaway from this framework is that there isn't a single correct level of AI involvement. Different organizations and even different processes within the same organization may require different levels of human oversight. So how do we determine the right level of AI authority? I generally encourage organizations to think about 5 questions. First, impact. What happens if the AI gets it wrong? Is it going to be just extra work, or is it going to impact safety, financial performance, and so on? Because the higher the consequences, the greater need for oversight. Next one is data quality, and maybe the most important one. because the question is, the data even good enough to support the AI? AI can only work with the data that is available to it. So if the data is incomplete, inconsistent, you're not going to fix the issue with AI, but you're just going to allow mistakes to happen faster and at a greater scale. The next question is about transparency. Can we understand how it reached that conclusion? Can we explain the outcome to trust the outcome? Accountability. Who owns the outcome, especially when errors happen? And lastly, regulations and privacy requirements. Are there any constraints in your organization that would limit what AI should be allowed to do? Are there requirements related to privacy, to data, security, or are there any industry regulations that you should follow? So before we continue, we have a question for the audience.
Perfect. Thank you for everyone participating in the polling. While this is being looked at, I will continue on the side of content here a little bit. Thank you, Mahnaz, for elaborating on the introduction as well as the different levels of involvement of AI. And Mahnaz already hinted on that the impact the deeper AI is involved in our organization can really be kind of felt with different severity. And so, but before we talk about the impact, we want to look at a few examples of what could actually go wrong. The most common kind of AI mistakes that are happening that you can also already observe when you are just interacting with, for example, ChatGPT, when you do your fact checking, is what we call AI hallucination. It's where a seemingly very credible text or a response looks factual, but when you do a little bit of digging, you really find inaccurate statements, and that's often the reason because AI either has an underlying data issue or a gap where AI doesn't really have any pattern that it can recognize to answer this question. I think the biggest danger in these kind of cases is that not that AI makes mistakes. I think that I think we can accept, but I think the biggest danger in this scenario is that it can convey the wrong information in a very convincing way, and that's really makes sometimes the identification of these issues a little bit more challenging. Then we also encounter AI bias from time to time. Often in operational, we find that kind of an operational bias based on, for example, an incomplete data history or an uneven data distribution over a portfolio. Let's say we have a lot of service requests or incidents reported in one of your buildings, but that could be, for example, due to the fact that the people are very much more versed with the technology to report those incidents than in other buildings of your portfolio. But the AI may think, oh, just because I'm getting way more reports of incidents from building B, the assets or the technical infrastructure in that building might be worse than in building A. But it could be just an uneven distribution of underlying data that will cause this. Sometimes AI also doesn't have all the context to make the best decision, right? And I think Mahnaz already mentioned underlying data is kind of key in the best possible output from the AI. And yeah, required context is not always visible to the AI since it's not always stored in the system, right? An organization could go to political changes. There could be reorganizations. There could be events that were taking place that are kind of out of the norm, but AI and especially decisions made by AI could not have insight in these kind of situations that are out of the norm. Other points are also for incomplete data and then try to automate behavior based on incomplete data. This is especially tricky with AI since the deeper the involvement level that Mahnaz mentioned earlier, the more automation is driven through AI. And when data on the basis is not supporting and has quality issues, the challenge is actually the scale. So AI could drive a lot of impact, could perform a lot of changes, could decide based, for example, on sensor readings that certain equipment should be shut off, etc. And where normally bad data that's used manually creates like a local problem, if data is analyzed by AI and applied in a greater scale, these problems also could have an effect of greater scale. Yeah, a little bit in alignment with the hallucination challenge that we addressed in the beginning, is also kind of the hidden issues and the polished answers that AI gives from time to time. AI tends to fill kind of gaps within responses through like very clean and correct answers, and it seems that for example, a report or an analysis seem accurate and complete, but it might just fill the gaps and not report back that a report is missing key criteria to make a decision, which would, for example, be way different handled by a human that would, when trying to create a report, encounter these challenges and report certain missing information as a critical stop to finalize this deliverable. Last but not least, we also would like to highlight that AI issues can have a cascading downstream effect, especially if we talk about the deeper levels of AI involvement. We encounter there really downstream process challenges. So if, for example, AI makes a decision to initiate a work order, this work order could come with a procurement order to order equipment for something that needs to be replaced during that order. It will schedule technicians that need to go out into the field and then, for example, perform the replacement. It will potentially reschedule and reprioritize other work orders that were supposed to take place during that time. And it can really disrupt downstream impact and can touch a lot of processes of your facilities organization. So just be aware of this. Now let's talk a little bit, not just what can go wrong, but also what is the impact. We already mentioned that with AI potentially touching a lot of aspects of your systems and your system landscape, and the continuous drive for more and more automation and connectivity, these impacts can be quite severe. We broke down the impact kind of in multiple areas. The first impact is obviously the operational impact. If AI makes a mistake, it can have a direct impact on the reliability and the delivery of the services of your facilities or of your team. That, for example, as mentioned earlier, if AI doesn't have all the content available and decides to switch off the HVAC system or lighting, after hours, but they don't know there's a big marketing event happening in a building, right? That is obviously in the setting of AI a step for optimization, but it might not be the best input for the continuity of service in that case, right? In general, I think the idea is that reliability should always come before the optimization when introducing AI. There's also a human impact when having AI and take more and more over. There's always a human oversight required, and there's also a shift in how kind of the humans will interact within a system landscape where more and more AI is deployed. Roles and responsibility will slightly shift, but they have to be very clear, right? So depending on the involvement of AI, we have to make clear statements on who will follow up on recommendations, who will validate if AI performs even and gets more and more involved on the operational side. So let's say work orders, etc., are created by AI, right? So the roles like the technician, the facility manager, or the service desk are going to be slightly changed, and the roles and responsibilities need to be clear who follows up and intervenes if required. Related to that is also the governance impact, right? I think auditability is kind of a big factor when you either maintain or own a real estate portfolio. So it's very important that when working with AI, that the underlying decision-making remains auditable. So in case of something goes wrong or there's a mandatory audit taking place, so it's important to understand what's the underlying data, who approved or validated certain decisions. And I think the key stance here should be if something is not auditable after involving AI, it should probably not be fully automated through AI. Data is probably the biggest point that Mahnaz already led into this presentation. It's very key that the underlying data is really supporting the decision-making process of AI. The saying is AI and the effectiveness of AI will only be as good as the underlying data. It's really not possible to increase automation without the organization knowing what the quality as well as the limitation of the data is that exists within their portfolio. Last but not least, we also have to address exception. I think everyone agrees that FM is not always linear, not always planned. FM is full of exception. Things happen out of the norm. And AI's strong suit is more in a more consistent environment, recognizing pattern, learning from previous behavior, etc. So the key point to take away is the more exceptional your environment is, the more you have to handle in certain systems or workflows with exceptions, the more human intervention has to remain to just make sure that the exceptions are getting addressed with the right priority and the right effectiveness.
Thank you, Lucas. So as we think about AI adoption in facility management, these are probably some of the key principles to keep in mind. First, AI should support the judgment. So the goal is to help FMs make better and faster decisions. Second, accountability. And we mentioned accountability a few times through the slides. Even when AI provides recommendations or take actions, organizations need to know who is ultimately responsible for the outcome. Third, it's important to understand the limits of AI. So yes, AI is interesting, can be very powerful, can be helpful and make us do tasks way more efficiently, but it can also be wrong. It can be incomplete or lack context for important operations. And those are the points that Lucas went through, such as hallucinations, the biases. Those can greatly impact the results, and those are part of the limitations of AI that needs to be considered. Fourth is oversight. We should define how AI decisions are monitored, reviewed, and updated when necessary because our operations may change, processes may change, and even data improves, you collect more. There are different factors that you start considering. And again, there are biases, hallucinations, and other factors related to AI. So it's very important to monitor those decisions and update them when it's needed. And finally, boundaries should be based on risk. So the higher the impact of the decisions, as we talked about during the AI involvement levels, the higher the impact of the decision on the safety, business continuity, liability, there's a stronger case for maintaining human involved in those processes. Next slide, Lucas, please. So before we wrap up our presentation, we have another question for the audience. We reviewed some of the cases through our system operation slide and also the AI level of involvement. Please let us know where can AI right now deliver the fastest and practical value in your facilities today. And that can be based on your accountability, based on regulations, the questions that we listed to think about how and which level AI should get involved in your processes. And you may already be even using AI in one of these cases already.
We need a countdown clock with music.
Sorry?
Does anyone have any questions? Please pop them into the chat. First, and before that, let's take a quick look at Planon poll 2.
Yeah, well, it's interesting to see the results, as we can see where the AI is used and the impact and also possible consequences if things go wrong. Thank you, Peter. I pass it to you.
Yeah, so quick question. We have 2 minutes left. What's the biggest mistake organizations make when introducing AI into facility management processes?
So one of the biggest mistakes I see generally is where people see AI, a tool, they get very excited about it, and then they start looking in their processes in their organization to find a place to use it. But the correct process, and maybe the more appropriate one, is to find the problem that you're dealing with and think about what kind of outcome you expect to get from any tool you're going to use, and then start to determine which AI tool might be an appropriate solution for your case. Because not all the time, even AI is the answer. Sometimes you first have to fix a process or collect better data or have even better data management before you move forward with choosing a tool that uses AI.
So we're coming up on time up, so we'll be answering other questions. Thank you both so much for your time and your valuable insights into AI. I appreciate everyone that's joined us for this session. I look forward to those of you who are coming to our next session, which is at 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time with the Digit Group. Thank you again, everybody, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.